all these models were painted with the same red, but they don't look the same at all. One looks dull, another looks dirty, and another one looks richer. So what's actually changing here? It is not the red, it's the shadows. So in today's video, I'll show you how to choose your shadow colors. Most beginners are told to use a black wash for everything. And to be fair, I've done that too. It's simple and it works. But shadows don't just darken your miniature, they can change how the model feels. And if that choice is off, the whole model can feel like it's missing something. Shadows don't just make things darker, or separate one area from another. They also help define the environment your model lives in. And once you start thinking about them that way, you can stop guessing and start choosing them on purpose. Black is the simplest option. It gives strong contrast, but it also makes your colors darker and duller, often resulting in you having to build up the brightness again. I like to use it when I want to simulate the absence of light, things like night scenes, dark environments, or when setting up an OSL effect. In those cases, it works perfectly, because everything is meant to feel dark. But if your base color is already dark, black quickly becomes your last option, because there is not much room left to push it further. In conclusion, I'd recommend using black for clear separation, dark environments, or when your base color is already too dark for anything else. Brown is one of the most versatile shadow colors. Because it is essentially a mix of all three primary colors, it works with almost anything. You can think of it as a more chromatic version of black, which gives you a warmer, more natural result. It won't create as much contrast as black, but at the same time, it doesn't stand out as much, especially when you're working with bright colors. But be careful when using it with colors, like for example a rich blue, because the temperature change can start to clash, or even end up looking like dirt or weathering. This is when diluting your washes comes into the picture. It is possible to blend the color onto another through thin layers, but when using washes for shading, if applied right out of the bottle, they can end up being too strong and creating more of a stain than a shadow. Another option you'll see often is simply using a darker version of your base color. This is a very safe option and very easy to approach, especially since most paint ranges already give you 3 to 6 tones for each color. But the downside is that you lose the chance of having a unifying shadow tone, which makes it harder to create a strong sense of atmosphere. That said, if your goal is something that really pops on the tabletop, this approach works great. But for those of you that are just getting into the hobby, it requires the higher investment, since you will need, for example, to pick one of each colored wash. With chromatic shadows is where things get more interesting. Instead of using neutral shadows, you start using color. Not just a darker version of your base, but a different color entirely. Let us use red as an example. Blue is a cold color, and like we mentioned before with the brown, it can clash in temperature. So instead of pure blue, you can move along the color wheel and use something like purple, which sits between red and blue. This way you are shading the red, but instead of dulling it like black or warming it like brown, you are shifting it into a colder, more chromatic direction. The result feels richer and more intentional. And this works both ways. If you are painting something cold, you can push the shadows slightly warmer to create a different kind of contrast. It is something I've been exploring a lot in my own projects, and it can go surprisingly deep if you want to push it further. But I'll be honest, I am not an art teacher, and I don't want to turn this into a lecture. You don't need to understand the entire color wheel to make this work. You just need to start trying different choices on purpose. And the more you do, the more confident those choices will start to feel. Because at the end of the day, better miniatures don't come from perfect theory. They come from the small choices you make every time you pick up a brush. So instead of asking which shadow should I use, ask yourself what you want the miniature to feel like. Black is simple but darker and more dull. Brown is warmer, more natural, and can even double as dirt or wear. And chromatic shadows, well, even something as simple as moving one step on the color wheel, like from red to purple, can make your colors feel much richer. If your miniature feels off, it might not be your technique. It might be just the shadow color you chose. and what that choice is communicating against your expectations. This isn't a full color theory guide, and there are probably better videos on it out there, but if it helps you out the next time you paint, then it did its job. If you have any questions on the subject, feel free to leave them down in the comments. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.